welcome to another episode of Off the Print. This week with me in discussion is the Deputy Editor of Daily Mirror, Kelum Bandara, and Rehan Jayawickrama, a young dynamic leader who is also the Vice Chairman of the SJB Youth Wing. This week the country has been plunged into turmoil. While we speak, the cost of living is soaring outside, fuel prices are about to hit an all-time peak. We are facing a sugar scarcity, we are facing a gas scarcity, and people are actually wondering what's happening to the opposition. Where is the opposition? Where is the opposition leader, Sajid Premadasa, who seems to be a little silent over all these burning issues? Rehan, thank you so much for joining us on this program.
Thank you for having me.
So as I said in my introduction, where is Sajid Premadasa these days? He is the opposition leader, right?
I think this is something that we see in certain spheres of social media and stuff. But then when you actually think about it rationally, you have to think about the fact that we are a very young opposition. We are probably the youngest opposition out of all the parties that are probably in the political sphere right now. And we have 52 MPs, and in the midst of all that, we also do have Corona. And when you're talking about how can he not be more vocal about some of these things, he is. But then one other thing that we need to understand is that we don't have the support of certain mainstream media channels, where there are certain mainstream media channels that are completely biased or completely one-sided against SJB, and they have been so, and it has been an agenda for a very, very long time now. So all these things have to be looked at rationally. And also we have to understand that when we did have these protests, most of our protesters were taken and put on 14-day quarantine, even though they were granted bail by the courts.
Okay.
So that's something else also we have to understand. So while I do agree that there are certain things that we can be more active about, the complete pressure shouldn't just come on Sajid Premadasa, it should also come to all the other MPs and all the other members of the opposition. And all the opposition doesn't just mean the SJB, it also means the JVP, it also means the TNA, it also...
But all seem to be quite silent these days. I mean, the government is hunky-dory, having a free ride, because the opposition doesn't seem to be saying much.
I think that's also because the government has sort of stifled democracy, no? They have sort of put a impending lockdown on democracy to a extent where people are getting arrested for no reason. Quarantine laws have been put across to them, and they have been, and you have to understand, when most of these protesters, when they go into quarantine for 14 days, who's going to feed their families? So that adds even further economic burden to their families.
Okay.
So this government is not a government that encourages free speech, free will, or free anything, to be honest.
Okay.
Yes, Rehan, I have one question. Now, if you ask, this SJB as the main opposition, you said that it is still in its tender days, the youngest opposition, the youngest political party in Sri Lanka, as you said. But actually, most of these politicians, including the leader of the opposition, they have been in politics for long years. Especially Mr. Premadasa, he has been in politics starting from 2000.
Yeah.
So you can't say he is in his tender days of politics. Maybe the SJB as a party, it is quite new to the country. But those who run the party, the leaders of the party, they are a whole lot actually. So in that sense, can you say that?
I mean, when we look at the role of the opposition, what I'm saying is it doesn't always have to be just about the opposition leader. The opposition leader is only one figure in the entire opposition. And even though the opposition leader has been in politics for a long time, the SJB and many other political parties in this country have to depend on village committees, for example. So the SJB didn't have any of these when we went into our elections. For example, when we went into the presidential election, Mr. Ranil Wickramasinhe completely, the leader of the UMP completely, gave us a really hard time about it. We had absolutely no time to form our own party, and because of that, we had to go through another party. Then at the general election, again, it was with the greatest difficulty we got access to our own party, and even when we did, we only had, believe it or not, Kelum, we only had two leaders that were appointed during this time. That was the leader of the opposition, that was our leader Sajid Premadasa, and it was the general secretary. Not even the electoral organizers were appointed. So there has to be a certain structure within parties for us to do well. And also the fact that the Sri Lankan preferential vote system and the system where you need money to win also means that it's very difficult for us to compete with a party like the Pohottuwa, who is so economically built up. rather than the SJB. The SJB is still very young, but I'm sure the way we are going, that we'll be doing really well in
But
the future.
still, you have secured the opposition leader post. You are the main opposition of Parliament of Sri Lanka at the moment. So in that case, I believe you have enough and more wherewithal to take on the government. What
And
are the
I'll-
tools you have to take on the government?
And I'll just
like
add
I-
something there,
yeah.
Rehan. I mean, what Kelum is saying is correct. We see you all as the main opposition. You are the main opposition. So whether you all are young or not young is not something which the public actually wants to know. Public wants you all to deliver.
Yeah.
So, how are you going to take on this government?
I think the way it's going now, for the first time in a very long time, the public have started their own uprising without any political movements being there to support them.
Is it? Are you feeling it? Are
Of
you
course
feeling
we
that
are.
the public
Of
is uprising?
Of course we are. And at the same time, we, the JVP and all these parties, we have our own separate, for example, the farmers' protest.
Okay.
We also have a hand to play in it. The JVP also has a hand to play in it. We all have a, but it's just that what you all see now is a people's uprising. And you all think, and we haven't seen that before. So when you see the people rising up to this extent, you obviously think, what is the opposition doing?
Isn't this people uprising only on social media and in Colombo city?
No, I
Are
think...
you all seeing it in the outstations as well, where the
Absolutely.
Rajapaksas control a lot
Absolutely. Now, if you look at the areas where the Rajapaksas control power before, if you look at most of the votes they got from areas like Polonnaruwa and all these areas, right, where the former president became first from the peasantry vote. If you look at the way these people are acting now, the way they are burning effigies, these are not things that we wanted them to do, right? So when you see these things, what we are not used to seeing, you obviously see the opposition as being somewhat weak. But like I told you, Jamila, being weak and mainstream media channels not portraying what we do is also a big thing. Because you need and then again you say, okay, but then Rehan, what would the people have to do about this? But then we have to understand the optics of it and understand that the people also are fed what is delivered to them. And if that is not shown in certain media streams, and if certain media channels are really, really biased, and if they work towards making a particular candidate win,
Okay.
what do you expect the people to see? But I think the people are seeing now, and it's going to be really, really different in the future.
We're just going to go in for a short break. We will be right back. Welcome back to Off the Print. Today in conversation with me is the Vice Chairman of the SJB Youth Wing, Rehan Jayawickrama, and Deputy Editor of Daily Mirror, Kelum Bandara. We are discussing some vocal topics and some topics which are hitting the social media these days as to where is the opposition, where is Sajid Premadasa, why is the opposition not being more vocal and opposing as to what this government is doing.
Now, if you look at Sri Lanka in the present context, you see a lot of issues being discussed in social media and also in mainstream media. So, what are the specific things which you see as the government should reverse?
I think the number one thing that they should do is they should definitely revise the PTA.
Yes.
I'm not talking about totally scrapping it, because we have to be realistic, but making it very different to what it is now. That's the number one thing. The second thing is they have to stop inciting racial tension, because right now the people of this country have also started realizing that they are inciting racial tension. A third thing I would say is they have to stop this culture of using certain, I keep on reiterating this, certain mainstream media channels to hoodwink the people, because all these three things combined is going to have a huge effect on how our people are going to behave in the future.
Yeah, now actually Rehan, instead of taking on the government, you try to take on the mainstream media. Actually, in what areas have you gone wrong? Can you cite examples?
Okay, so I wasn't really going behind the mainstream media. I was only talking about a recent affiliation that has put the country in the situation that it is now. And I'm not going to name the media stations as well, because I don't think that's a very ethical thing to do. But I think what I'm saying...
but in general terms, you can you can identify certain issues and how
Okay,
those things
so
are
if
covered.
you speak about the Dr. Shafi issue,
Yes.
if you see the way certain media channels or one media channel portrayed it, and where is it now? When you think about how they hoodwinked Buddhism, our birth religion to most Sri Lankans, right? 70-something% are Sinhalese Buddhists in this country, and they showed a place that was holy, And they also showed something that was very near black magic, and they fooled the people just before the elections. Then when you talk about the roadside shop that sold pills that would mixed in their kotta roti that makes women infertile, you know, all these things. I mean, Kelum, as a journalist, I'm not going to ask you the same question, but don't you agree with me?
But Rehan, all this is fine, but I'm sure opposition also has some kind of partnerships with certain media organizations. You cannot tell me opposition is all clean. We didn't see that happening during the general election. So it's not just fair to go behind certain media organizations who, yes, openly support the Rajapaksas, because, come on, you guys had your deals as well.
The thing is, I'm going to talk about the times that I've been in politics, which is for the past, I have a 5-year stint in politics.
Okay.
So I'm just going to talk about what I have been through, because I'm not going to carry the burden
But this
or
is
the
a
baggage of what
reality.
other
But
guys have
this is
carried.
a reality, Rehan.
And also
because
we
the
don't...
SJB also during the previous general election had been in partnership with certain media organizations. It's
But
not only the SLPP.
But I don't think that our media campaign, I don't think that just because a media channel gave us coverage, we could call us making deals with them, because it could be just the will of that media channel to support us. But the thing is, we never pushed our script the way the current government did. And I mean, Jamila, just look at the script. If you look at the script that they're still running to date, they're still running that same old script. So like what I said before, this is not centered around the media channels. The only reason I brought up the media channels because I was asked why the opposition is lacking in certain departments, and that was just one of the things I used.
Rehan, you seem to be talking about racism, which I do agree with you. But recently, when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa appointed Venerable Yanasara Thero, who's a very controversial figure. You know, we did not see any direct statement released by Sajid Premadasa, who's the opposition leader. When we took the SJB head-on social media, certain of your members responded to a few of us saying that, you know, the party has released a statement. So fine, that is the will of the opposition leader himself, but that's not how it works, Rehan. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Premadasa released a statement only probably 3 days later after Yanasara.
But what we have to understand then is, what I always tell people is, it's not about a race of who gives a statement the fastest. That's number one. And number two, the statement that we released as a party, that's what I'm trying to say, Jamila, right? Our party doesn't always mean, I mean, why does everyone think the SJB is Sajid Premadasa? That's not the case. It's Sajid Premadasa, the leader of the opposition, it's only the leader of the SJB. We are not an institute organization like the United National Party or the JVP. We are a very pluralistic, dynamic party which has all sorts of individuals in it, and that too elected by the people. So when we put out a statement, and when that statement is endorsed by the General Secretary of the party, and when that statement is put out, it's obviously with the guidance and obviously with the final endorsement of the leader of the opposition, or Sajid Premadasa. That being said, there is no necessity for him, in my opinion. Then again, your opinion and my opinion and Kelum's opinion could differ. But my opinion is that he doesn't have to come out every single time when the party releases a statement, because if we were following Sajid Premadasa, the individual, then we could, you know, think, yeah, why is he not making a statement on time? But when the party does it, I think it should go as also the statement of the leader of the opposition. And I think it's very unfair, and it's a very unfair rhetoric to keep on saying, why is Sajid not doing this, or why is Sajid not doing that? He can't be at all places as a leader of the opposition at the same time.
But he is being criticized very much for being in Yala.
And even when he gets wet in the rain, right? When he even, I just want to bring this up, even when he got wet in the rain, right? I don't know if you know this, Jamila, but I've been to Hambantota, and Hambantota is very much like certain areas in Waligama. And I'm sure Kelum has seen those areas in Anuradhapura as well. You're in the middle of a paddy field.
Yes.
Okay, and you have 2 of your bodyguards carrying your umbrellas.
Yes.
You're getting wet. And while you're getting wet, one of the bodyguards come and offer you their umbrella. Now there are another 30-50 farmers there who are getting wet in the rain. Now what would certain media stations have said if the opposition leader was holding the umbrella? Then they would have said, oh, you know, Sajid Premadasa is holding the umbrella being privileged while the farmers are getting wet in the... I mean, are these all criticisms that are worthwhile? And you're on Twitter, Jamila. Did you see what a controversy it created on Twitter? I mean, was it all worth it?
Yes.
He got wet in the rain, so what?
Yes. Rehan, we're just going to go in for a short break. We're just going to go in for a very short break. We'll be right back. Today with me in conversation is the Deputy Editor of Daily Mirror, Kelum Bandara, and the Vice Chairman of the SJB Youth Council, Rehan Jayawickrama. Kelum?
Yes, Rehan. Now, in your previous answer, you referred to various issues like racial tension, PTA. But actually, we see a whole lot of other issues also confronting the country at the moment, especially the cost of living is going through the roof. And then there is a huge debate over whether we should go for chemical farming or whether we should adopt organic farming. Actually, as the youth wing of the party, the youths are basically the future of the country. So,
Yeah.
as the youths, have you started any discourse internally about the policies on these issues, the policies of your party on these issues, whether we should go for chemical farming or organic farming?
We definitely have.
Yes.
We obviously haven't released our manifesto.
But actually, I would like you to be more specific on
I
those
will.
policy lines.
I
please.
will. So basically, when it comes to organic farming, the
Yes.
opposition or the youth group in the opposition, we never actually said that organic farming is a bad thing. We just said that it shouldn't be implemented in a ad hoc manner, that it should be implemented stage by stage, and in my opinion, it should have been something that should have been done in the president's last stages of his, that should have been his parting gift to the country, because he would have had enough time to implement how we are going to do this. But instead, they went for an overnight issue. So one thing is that in our party, when we make appointments, we are going to be appointing people to these institutions based on merit. They are not going to be based on how long they served in the military, or how much of a friend they are to the leader of the opposition, who will obviously be our president one day. It's going to be always based on merit. And I think Sajid Premadasa is someone, the leader of the opposition is someone who has always spoken about meritocracy.
Yes.
And unless we bring in that system of meritocracy into this government, all these things are going to prove futile. And even talking about it with ad hoc solutions is going to be futile unless the base problem of this issue is sorted.
Yes. Now, actually, in case you come to power, so what will you do about chemical farming or organic farming? What is your policy? What
Run
will
it
you
by
do?
science, run it by experts, not just
But
run it
actually,
by...
when you say run it by experts,
Yeah.
it's a broad, generalized statement.
No,
Actually, as the youths, as the young leaders of the party, you must have some specific ideas about it.
Experts in the sense, now for example, most of us are politicians. Most of us are not experts in agriculture. Most of us are not economists. Most of us are not financial bankers. Most of us are politicians.
Yes.
But then you also get a few of our members who are qualified enough to speak about these things. But when you're the leader of the country, and I've always said this,
Yeah.
what matters is not what you think, what matters is not what you think it's best. It's obviously the people you surround yourself with. And when I said experts, Kelum, what I meant is that there are certain experts who are renowned,
Yes.
not just in Sri Lanka, but there are many Sri Lankans who are world famously renowned in these particular fields. But if you can think of at least two of them that this government has utilized, then you will see the whole basis of this point. The basic point of this is that whoever comes into power has to run this with people that know how to do the job.
Rehan, you're a young leader. How do you see yourself surviving now with the SJB? You all did not have quite a bright future in the UNP, obviously, because you yourself were at loggerheads with UNP leader Ranil Wickramasinghe. What are you going to give the youth in the future? How can you yourself survive as a youth, as a young political leader in the SJB?
I mean, one of the main reasons I'm with the opposition leader is because I have a lot of faith in him, and also because of the fact that I've seen lots of things and how he works behind closed doors when it comes to campaign running and all these things. He's a very, Jamila, he's a very straightforward man who is not corrupt. And that is something we need in this country, because corruption has to end. And a lot of people think that he's lenient with people who are corrupt, or he won't issue statements. But you have to trust me that when most of these things happen, when most of these corruption incidents happen, and when I have, for example, personally spoken to him, he had been very stern about it, and he has said that these are things that he will not allow in his government. So what I'm saying is, because the people have given so many chances, so many undue chances to a government to completely ruin us to the point that I'm actually ashamed to call myself a Sri Lankan sometimes when I speak to lots of people around the world, because the fact of where our leaders have put us. It's not where we have put ourselves, but it's where our leaders have put us. And the fact that I believe that he will do the right thing, and the fact that I believe that a leader should not only be judged by the leader but those around him, I think he'll have a really good team around him. And I just think he just needs to be given the chance to prove to the country that he'll be a very good and effective and non-corrupt and courageous leader.
You know, Rehan, yesterday was the SLPP anniversary, and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa in his speech said that the youth who painted walls when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa won the presidential election are now queuing up outside the passport office to go overseas, which obviously hints that the government is accepting that there is frustration now amongst the youth.
Yeah.
Well, can capitalize on this. Are you all going to do it?
We absolutely are, but the fact is that we are going through a brain drain right now, much like what went on during the JVP days. And it's a very bad sign because lots of people who are meant to be engineers, meant to be doctors, meant to be scientists, are going into different parts of the world now. But like I said, Jamila, these are not things that we can do overnight, but we are working on it. And we are working on these target groups, and we are trying to encourage as much as possible for them not to leave the country and to give us one more chance. But then again, you think that is it fair for us to do so, because we are also ruining the future of someone who may have a brighter future. So I think there's no way around it, to be honest.
Actually, as the youth wing of the party, how have you identified the issues confronting the youths of this country, and what are the plans to retain those youths who are planning to, leave the country for greener pastures?
The first thing I think is the youth of this country, the entire university system, for example, Kelum, and the way it's structured is also part of the blame that we have to put on ourselves, because the way some of the youth are acting nowadays, I mean, there are some youth, for example, in Colombo University or Jawaharlal who take 5 to 6 years to graduate because they're stuck in that particular union. But then again, a lot of people blame them, right? But then again, aren't we to blame? Aren't the governments to blame for that? So, like what you asked about your question, Kelum, I think that question again can't be answered that simply as you put it, because the entire system, in my view, has to be changed.
Actually, I will be a bit more
If you can
specific
just be,
on
yeah.
this. Yes. Now, you say that our university system has to be restructured.
Yeah.
Does it mean that you need to introduce private higher education as
Absolutely.
well, private universities?
Absolutely. That may not be the view of my party as yet, because we haven't made official statement on it. But if I were to one day take leadership mantle in this country in a place where I'll be a minister, or if I'll have some sort of power, or if I'll be a member of parliament, at least one of the first things that I'll propose as a private member's motion in parliament would be to establish private universities. I think that's the only way forward, and that's the only way that a certain amount of brain drain will stop in this country.
Actually, what are the plans to convince your party to do it?
I have a feeling I don't need to. I think somewhere down the line,
Yes.
our party will have to
Yes.
agree with the policy, because that's what the whole of this country will
But
want.
actually, what I have observed over the years is that whenever any party, maybe for example, we take party A, when party A tries to do something to reform the education sector, the party B, they oppose. And again, when the party B is in power, they try to do the same, and then the party A opposes. But how can we have a departure from this practice and really bring about educational reforms in the country?
There has to be one person
Yeah.
to come into the country to become the president of this country, just like how I believe that the opposition leader would do it. That one person has to come in and change his entire system from scratch, and we haven't had that one person yet, Kelum.
We would love to go on with this conversation further, but we are running short of time, so we will
Thank
have
you.
to cut it off here.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Jamila.
you so much, Kelum, for
Yeah,
joining
thank you,
me. Rehan,
Jamila.
thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Kelum.
driving all the way from Waligama to join us on this program.
Of course. My pleasure.
We will see you again next week with a brand new episode of Off the Print. Good night.